Do we need to do any introduction? I think there
Yeah,
are a couple
Roland.
of new faces. Do you want to introduce?
Yeah, I'm going to introduce Roland. He is my new PhD student. And I don't know, coming to us from lots of places.
Florida State University.
Florida State's the last one, and then
University of Mississippi.
University of Mississippi.
So what do you think about the weather so
Go. I did my master's in chemical engineering and my BSc in chemical engineering. So I think biosystems is the way forward for me.
Absolutely.
So looking forward to working with everybody.
And he's down with Joe in the bullpen, so stop in and say hi.
Another new face. I'm not sure I recognize.
I've been from Nigeria, Federal University of Technology, I'm lecturer there. I'm a PhD scholar.
With Dr. Adedeji Bodie? Is that who are you working with?
I'm working with Dr. Akimbode Adedeji.
We call him Dr. Bodie.
Okay, I think I recognize everyone else. So, all right. Well, welcome. So I have my trivia questions again. If we're still up for trivia questions. So here we go. So what show debuted in 1963 and became the longest-running sci-fi series?
Sorry.
No. Someone said something over here.
Dr. Hill?
Doctor Who.
Ah! Ooh!
All right. So today we're having this Dr. Stombaugh. He is going to talk about some of his experiences that he had after flipping his GATE 417 class last semester. And I'll just turn it over to you and let you talk a little bit more about it.
All right, sounds good. Yeah, this presentation kind of came out of lunch conversations, and I think Dr. Montrose offered to pay for anybody to give a seminar for lunch. Maybe not.
We're heading to McDonald's.
So yeah, I was trying to think about a good title for this. Of course, you go a lot of different places when you start talking about doing stuff. But my thoughts went back to my teenage son. So he came to me just a couple months ago. And he said, Dad, someday I want to live in Arkansas. I said, Arkansas? He said, yeah, I want to move to Arkansas. I said, why do you want to move to Arkansas? He said, there's a cool town in Arkansas. And he shows me his phone. This is the picture that's on his phone. And, uh-oh, technology won't work here. It won't work at all.
You froze it.
I did. Maybe I'm at the end. Am I at the end? Well, there it is. So I said, well, yeah, and I stepped right into it. I said, why would you want to live in flippin' Arkansas? Yeah, so like, okay, this kid's pulling the joke on me. This is a legitimate place. I looked it up. So there's a map. It's up in north central Arkansas. There's a legitimate town called Flippin' Arkansas. You can get the T-shirt to prove that you were there and everything. And it's like your whole life would be a joke. Where are you going? Down to the Flippin' grocery store. They do have a Flippin' cemetery. There is a Flippin' cemetery.
I wonder the origin of that.
I know it's interesting, So, and any town to be a town's got to have a what to be a town?
Post office.
Post office. Well, come on. We get water. It's got to have a Walmart, doesn't it?
Oh, Walmart.
Flippin' has a Walmart. When you leave the Walmart, there's a sign. Thank you for choosing your Flippin' Walmart. Even going to church is a joke. Where do you go? The Flippin' Church of God. Attend church. There's the Flippin' Police Fire Department. I think it would be really cool to legitimately say, yeah, I got pulled over last night by the police. There it is. And if that doesn't end well, you end up spending the night in. There it is. The old Flippin' City Jail.
Oh, so cute.
Isn't that cute? Yeah, that would be rough in the summertime, especially in Arkansas. They have a high school. They're the Bobcats. So, somewhere somebody has said, yeah, we got beat by the fucking Bobcats and so all that kind of stuff. Although I think I was disappointed in the mascot in the high school. It should have been something like the Cardinals or the Eagles or something like that, Then the cheerleaders could say, go Birds. You might go down by one of them foam fingers, Let's leave it at that. So this is all about flipping 417. That's what we're going to do, flipping BA 417. So what I'm going to do is spend a few minutes talking about basically about why I did it, how I did it, and what I learned about it. And I'd like to say that, I did a whole lot of research and figured out all about this flipped classroom kind of thing. I'm going to be careful how I talk for the rest of the day. But, did a lot of research about it, but really it came about kind of last minute because when getting ready for class, I looked at the class rules and they were big, and so how do we handle this thing? So I did a little bit of research, but this is how, what it did. So a little bit of background on what 417 is, especially for people who aren't familiar with it. It is Introduction to Design of Ag Machinery. It's one of our 4 core courses that we take here. Our undergraduate students have to take 3 of 4, so this is one of the 4. So I see quite a few students in there, quite a few who have no propensity toward machinery at all, and so I get kind of a mix in that classroom, but it is one of the core courses. And I built a pretty heavy laboratory component into that, so I think it's very valuable to get our hands on things, to do stuff in the labs with dynamometers, with spray nozzles, with hydraulics, with a lot of different things. So it's kind of a broad survey course. So there's a lot of hands on that. And it's kind of interesting the way it's been scheduled over the last number of years. It's a 3-credit course with a laboratory component. Typically you'd have 2 lecture hours and then a 2-hour lab in every week. This one's always been scheduled for 2 2-hour blocks. And that's given me a lot of flexibility to do lectures, do discussions, class discussions. When we get to the point we're ready to do a lab, we take the 2 hours and go down and do the lab. So you can do lab on Monday, do lab on Wednesday, whenever you need to. So it's been kind of nice in that respect. The class has grown over the last couple of years, and so I was actually able to extend the lab section. So what I would do is just poll the students to say, hey, is anybody available at 8 o'clock, so an hour before class, and is anybody available for an hour after class? And I could split up that lab time then, that 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock time slot, open it up to 8 to 12, and then split the class into thirds. And so I would actually have 3 different lab groups come in, so they'd have a little bit more than an hour to work on their labs. There's some overlap, so if somebody's finishing up activities, you can do the introductory stuff for the next group, and it's worked out really well. Until we got 32 students, and then you divide 32 by 3, and that's 10 students looking at one piece of equipment. You know what would happen. You'd have 2 or 3 students actually engaged in doing something, the other 7 on their phone or doing something else. And so it's not going to be a valuable exercise to have that many people in the class. And so that's what, with that size of class and the desire to keep the laboratory component, how do we go with it? So that was kind of the motivation. I wanted to keep that laboratory component. I think that's valuable for the class, for the experience that they get. I think our students need to have some laboratory experiences to be able to know how to collect data, how to make reports and things like that. So I wanted to keep that. I think there's a value of hands-on with real equipment. So a lot of people have talked about, have looked at different kinds of videos and virtual type of labs and stuff like that. But again, I value getting your hands on something and making it, make some smoke roll or something like that. I didn't want to split the class into multiple sections because you're really not splitting it into 2 sections. You're really thinking about splitting it into 6 sections, and that's a completely different animal. So that didn't seem like an option either. Of course, room size is an issue here. Are we okay with it?
Sorry, got it.
Moving around there so we can see a little bit better. So the video, I guess, be there. So, what is the flipped classroom? So this is what I considered. So flipping the classroom is basically everything that's inside goes outside, everything that was outside comes inside, and it kind of basically turns it upside down. So I think you've ever seen that kids go back there. So that's the general idea of it. And I think there's probably a lot of different concepts that people have about what that flipped classroom is. But in general, when you talk about a flipped classroom, traditionally in the classroom it's a lecture, okay? Somebody stands up in front and talks. And so that's what we take from the inside of the class to the outside. So that goes online, some type of a video. And that's what I'm going to spend quite a bit of time here today looking at the video products. And that's what kind of prompted some of these conversations is what do those videos look like, how do they come out, and so forth. And how did you pull that off? And so that's what we'll look at, is how those lectures go outside, and then the stuff that we would traditionally do outside the class comes in. So more recitations, collaborative work, and stuff like that. And I brought in, it's not really a true flipped classroom because I brought the laboratories inside the class. Now they were always inside the class, but they're taking up more of the time inside that class. And so that was a little bit different than what people commonly think of as a flipped classroom. Okay, so that's what we're doing. So what did 417 actually look like when I did it? So it was approximately 2 hours of lecture a week online, so, and it was trying to be commensurate with what you would typically have with 2-hour classes, in-class kind of activities. Distribute those lectures via YouTube, and we'll see some examples. I'll show you a number of different video examples, so forth. The students had access to them. I built a page in Canvas with the links to it so that they have all the information there on a weekly basis. And then I was able to actually split the class into 6 groups. So I've got these 2-hour blocks every week. I've expanded them an hour on each end, and so I ended up with extra time there, and I had 6 groups. So 3 of them were assigned to Monday, 3 of them were assigned to Wednesday. On a lab week, and I didn't do labs every week in the class, but on the weeks when I would do a lab, the students would come to their lab time. So basically what that meant is that the students would show up for a little over an hour a week, depending on what that lab exercise was. And I think that may be a fault in this whole philosophy and this approach that I took to it with the laboratory experiments, was a lack of contact with the students, and I'll go back to that and talk a little bit more. But that's what they would do in the lab week. Then on weeks when I would do a recitation when we didn't have lab, then I would still leave the class split in half with the idea that a smaller group in the classroom would be a little bit more intimate, have more discussions, a little bit better interaction and stuff like that, to do some recitation, do some example problems, some designs and so forth. So that was kind of the philosophy, and that's what it looked like. All right? Flawed, I think so. Might do things a little bit differently, and I'll come back to some other. All right, does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? I'm a Yankee, I talk fast, so you can ask questions as we go through. We'll see some examples. So what is the videos? When I thought about making these videos, I wanted to make sure that they were effective overall. So I didn't want something that, was going to be a waste of time on my time to create them and on the students' time as well. So what is effective? And, we could probably spend a long time talking about whether it would be effective in terms of a video like this. But some of the quick thoughts that I had, they got to be interesting. They can't be boring. And you hear a lot of people doing videos, and the students have told me through this experience that some of the stuff they get is basically a professor sitting in their office with the PowerPoint on the screen, and they're just recording audio over top of the PowerPoint. And so that, to me, is not interesting. You need to have that personal contact, some type of interaction where I can look at people, and I'm very passionate, a lot of you know I'm very passionate about public speaking. So having that eye contact, that being able to address the people and get some feedback, at least nodding heads or something like that, to know that you're effectively communicating. So that personal contact is very important. And having the appropriate amount of content in the video and the appropriate level. So how deep can you go, what can you present, and how long can you do that, and so forth. And so those are the kind of things that I thought about as I was putting these videos together. Okay? Now I've had a little bit of kind of unique experiences, and let me kind of go away from the university for a minute and talk about some other experiences that really opened my eyes to what this video, how you communicate with video. And I'll go to our church. And we had an interesting situation a couple years ago that we outgrew the facility. There wasn't room for all the people to sit there. And so we, instead of building facilities, which was going to be cost prohibitive, we actually used some extra rooms in the current facility, and we created a live broadcast of what was going on in the main meeting area. And so we basically, it was a live TV studio, so multiple cameras and all this kind of stuff, people sitting on headsets. But what that really forced me to do, be involved with that, is to think about what is it that you look at as an audience. So when you're sitting in that room, you guys are sitting in here, what are you looking at? Are you looking at me, or are you looking at the content that's on the screen? Would it be different if I'm standing close to the screen where you can kind of see both things, or if I move far away from the screen? Now you've got to decide, are you going to look at me, or are you going to look at the screen? Where's your attention going to be? And so when you're working on that video, you're trying to take that communication. And our pastor's kind of unique. Those are the slides that he uses, and he uses a lot. It would be like an extension presentation. So in a 40-minute presentation, he's using 50 to 70 slides. So there's a lot of that visual content that he uses to communicate. He's very effective at it. How do I translate that now into that video product that somebody else can follow and be connected with what he's saying? And so, it's that creating that video product that is the real challenge of how do you do that effectively. And so, going through that exercise and being able to do this is really helping think about what it is that I put on the video, what kind of graphic content, how much talking do you do, and so forth, and how do you move that back and forth, and that's helpful in this sense. So let me show you some examples of a couple things we do. Now, one example I'm going to go to probably about 2 years ago now. Some colleagues at Purdue contacted me and said, hey, we'd like to create an online class. We're getting experts from around the country to come and do different modules for us. Would you come up and record some video modules? And so this was on precision agriculture. So I want to show you this example and look at the quality on this one, because I think this is would be an example of a pretty high quality type of a video. So, and you don't need to worry about content so much, but what does it look like?
Control on our sprayer and how it can really save us money by not applying material where we don't want it to be. But there are some issues with that, and that's what we're going to look at in this session, of the problems that can cause for us. So let's go back to this map of showing how the automatic section control works. We talked about how as that machine comes out of and back into these headland areas, that we can turn off individual sections of that boom so that we don't spray outside of where we want to spray. We don't double cover on something that we've already sprayed. But what happens now on that machine is when I turn off one section of the boom, there's liquid flowing through the rest of that boom. There's a pump that is pumping stuff on there. And we can have some pressure spikes that get transmitted along the boom. So I shut off one section, the pressure in the rest of the boom goes higher until that flow controller can respond to it and get the flow back to where I need it to be. So this graph actually shows some real data of this flow controller response. What happens when I turn a boom on and off? And there's a number of lines on this graph here that we'll talk about. But if we look at...
Pause. Oh. I meant to pause it on the video and actually look at the video that's there. So I want to do this the right way.
No. We'll talk about. But if we look at...
So what do you see on quality on that? So pretty nice, pretty decent. Okay, so this was recorded in a studio in front of a green screen. So like a weather forecast. When you see the weather forecast on television, so it's the same kind of studio that you have there. So you've got a green screen behind you. I've got graphics that are on multiple screens in different places. So when you turn one way, you look. The problem is everything is backwards on that. So if you watch weather forecasters, they're always awkward because everything is backwards. So what you do, the right is left and everything. So, but you do have interesting opportunity to be able to point at things and interact actually with that graphic there live. This takes a lot of time to put together, so you got to go record this thing, and then they had a team of people that were video editors that went through that video, put it together. I created the slides, but I didn't have this background on it. I created just very basic generic slides without any background, which is what they wanted. Leave a space on the side so I could stand there and talk. And then they actually put the background and adjusted the slides, so they were spending a lot of time to put these things together. So I've got, a couple hours of really, really nice video, but they put a lot of money into it. All right, I'm starting this in the summer and trying to get it ready for the fall. This isn't going to happen, so where do we go from here? How do we make this go? All right, so fortunately we have a really nice resource, some great people to work with over there. It's called the Faculty Media Depot. It's in the Science Library. And that's what they do, is help create these kind of videos and stuff like that for flipped classrooms, for different types of things. And they can do a lot of different kind of stuff. They really have two different studios in there. They have a video studio, which is what I use, you see on the upper right there. They do have an audio studio with really high quality microphones, so you can create audio recordings with a PowerPoint or something like that. But I use the video studio. They do have green screen capabilities. I never used it, so we didn't do that because of all the post-process editing it would take to put those together. So I did not use the green screen, nor did I use the teleprompter. They've got the teleprompter. It's a very flexible studio, so they can set it up to do interviews and all that kind of stuff. So they have, comfy lounge chairs that people can sit around and interview things. So they can do a lot of different things there. What I utilized was their capability to use PowerPoint with a picture-in-picture in different formats. And I'll show you some different examples of that, of what they look like they came up with. And so that was one thing to do. The other thing they had there was a lightboard. And so this is like the CSI television programs, with a big glass, and you write on it with an iridescent marker. So you can see an example there of the person that's writing on that. Again, these folks were really, really good to work with. There was a very quick turnaround. If the videos went pretty smoothly, I would record them. By the time I got back to the office, they were already in the Google Drive, so they used Google Drive to exchange the files. I would then pull the files, download them from Google Drive, and then put them in YouTube, and so I distributed them with YouTube. So I'm talking with them, they said that's the best way to distribute that to students so they can get at it on a variety of platforms and so forth to be able to watch the videos. So that's the studio. Now what do you get out of it? What's it look like? And I'll show you a couple different examples. And again, this is kind of weird, you have to listen to yourself talk, and that's one of the things you find when you go back and listen to your videos. It's like, oh, I can't believe I stumbled over that, I would do that differently. And so you really be self-critical about all that kind of stuff. So I'll show you a couple of different examples. This is one where you're basically just working with the slide. So it's kind of like that Purdue example, but I don't have the picture-in-picture, so I can't really reach over top of it. So this is actually a full live video. The little relic that you see on the side there is actually a computer stand that actually comes into the frame a little bit. And so what I'll do is at some points then is walk over and annotate on the screen so they have a tablet there. So this is an example. I'm not doing any annotation, so this is just talking with the slide.
So we'll talk about how we mitigate these and the different ways that we.
I had a slide changer just like that, so I
So
can flip
with
the
you
slides and
mentioned,
move the slides at whatever
and
speed I want to. But again, I've got that
trade-off there.
personal
So if you
connection.
think about it,
They can see me, they can see my hand
30
motion and so forth, they can also see the graphic on the side. at the same
And
time.
we looked at that combustion equation and how that's a perfect combustion. The only result, the only products are carbon dioxide and water.
Okay, so those are pretty simple to put together. They put an X on the floor, you stand there and talk, okay?
Can you see your slides?
You can, yeah, you can see everything. And so that's one of the things that, and you'll see me, some of these slides, this is earlier and I didn't do as good at it, but the way the way they have it set up, the camera is right in front of you, but the screen that shows what's going on is off to the side. And your tendency is to look at that screen and look at the information, and so now you're not connected with the student. So it's real critical to look into the camera and kind of keep that screen in your peripheral vision. So it took me a while, and then you're looking at videos as I went back and pull some of these examples out. It's like, yeah, I did a whole lot better by the end of the semester than I was at the beginning of the semester, because I was looking back and forth and not really having that eye contact with the camera, if that makes sense. All right, so that's an example. Annotation, so here's one that's going to annotate. Now, the people in the studio were doing the switching live, and so they would try to anticipate when I wanted to go annotate something on the screen. They would go full screen with the slide so you can see the annotations and then come back. And here's an example where I'm trying to go and trying to get them to go and they won't go, so it's kind of interesting to see that. But I'm moving off to the side to that computer desk there.
There's a number of
the
fundamental
annotation is.
different types that we can look at there. We can look at a gear and a vane and a piston. We'll look at each one of those, but I want to show you, before we go there, we'll go to the slide here and show you what the JIC symbols look like for these pumps.
Please.
And there's a lot of variations that we can build into these symbols.
Please go to the
So if we can
slide.
zoom into the
There,
slide.
you finally got it.
The JIC symbol for a pump, and you saw it earlier on that earlier drawing, it's a circle with an arrow coming out of it. So again, it kind of shows you, a lot of these pumps are circular like that. There's an arrow coming out of it. And the drawing could be as simple as that. Sometimes we will...
All right, so that's an example where we're doing the annotation on the screen, and so you're not the whole time talking over the slide. You do have that personal connection, but part of the time you lose that. You go to the slide, and the information is critical. You do the annotations and so forth that you need to right there. Okay, so that's an example of that, and they would switch back and forth again. They would try to anticipate what you're going to do, and when you were done, or actually when I'd walk away from the computer back over to my X, then they do it back out to the wide screen, so you can kind of control that communication a little bit with them. So the next one here is an example with the lightboard. I mentioned that lightboard is that it basically just a glass. It's kind of weird because when you're in the studio, you're standing like 2 feet or so from a big glass pane, and the camera and the lights and everything are on the other side of this glass. And so you're really, talking to the glass right there. But with the microphones and everything, it doesn't sound weird, but then you can write on that glass and they can show that on the video. Okay, so here's an example where I go from this slide, annotating the slide to the lightboard.
The displacement. So the displacement then, when I define the displacement of the engine, it is going to be based on that stroke. Okay, so the displacement, and I'll call that, and let me look at my notes to make sure we stay consistent with your textbook and everything. We call this V sub C. And V sub C then is the displacement, or the volume that is displaced by a cylinder. And it's very simple, it's just a cylindrical equation, so pi times the radius of
Right,
that
so you don't need to
cylinder.
learn about calculating it, but you get the idea of what that looks like on the screen with the markers. And so it shows up pretty neat, yeah?
Did you have to write backwards? Or?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna ask.
So I am right-handed, okay? So that's a good question. Look at my shirt.
Yeah.
Okay, so they flipped the video, and that was, the students, that was the first thing they told me. It's like, man, we looked at that, it was like, how do you write left-handed and backwards? I know you're right-handed, but yeah, you're right-handed. No, so it's a flip video, so you do everything straight, and that's what's different from the green screen kind of thing, because everything you do is in the right direction. So if I talk about the right-hand side of the equation, I talk about the right-hand side of the equation. When the camera flips it around, the students are looking at it over there, it's the right-hand side of the equation. So you don't have that same confusion. Yeah, so you gotta be careful, you gotta think about, okay, what is right, what is left? So yeah, so I wasn't writing left-handed, I was writing right-handed, and they do that with the video, they flip the video over and make it happen. Another quick one is, and they can take the screen off and just do the light board.
So that's
So there's an example without that
the
picture.
front axle pull.
And you got the whole board to write big equations or whatever you want to do on that.
So you end up writing over your face.
You do, yeah, and some of the early ones, and I wasn't as good on this one, I would write in front of myself, and then I'd look at the camera and then look at the screen, it's like, oh, they can't see it, so you'd move over, you know, into a blank spot, so I would find myself doing that, and I'll just stop
And then
that.
apply, since
I'd find myself doing that. You think about working that board, and in a problem like this where I'm working examples here and I've got equations over here, I'd find leave a spot in the middle where I can stand and talk to people and not block what's going on. So, and there's some different marker colors and stuff like that that you can work with. And they adjust the lighting. If you notice when you're using the light board, you don't see yourself very well, so my hair is gone. So from a video perspective, if somebody, you know, my guys at my church would do that, I'd yell at them about backlight and everything else, like, come on, let's get some depth in that video so you can see the person. They set it up differently because the primary content is what's on the screen there. Okay, so they do set that up, and the lighting is a little bit different on that. Okay, so that's kind of some different examples of the way they can put together what they look like. So they come out looking pretty professional. Again, there's no splicing or editing on this. There were a few videos where I'd screw up in the middle. I had one where the computer hung up and did something goofy for me. I said, don't worry about it, we'll just go back and cut that piece out of it. And so the editing that they did was basically just pulling some chunks out and kind of cleaning up some things like that. But they weren't splicing. Now, they do have the capability to do that. Again, they have the green screen, and they capture all the cameras and the slides and everything on separate feeds, so they can switch back and forth and change how they switch them. So they do have the capability to do that. But most of my videos ended up smooth enough that we just did them as recorded and we were able to move on. Okay. Now, later on in the semester, again, that first example with the annotating the slides, I ended up, a lot of times, it was just a slide on the screen, and I said, I want to have a little bit more contact. Is there anything else? Can we rearrange the studio or do something there? I said, yeah, here's something we can do. So they actually changed the studio configuration for me so that the tablet was right in front of me, and I didn't need to move over to get the tablet. So now I can stand there with the tablet and do the annotations, okay? And I can show you an example of that. And they still would, and some, when it would look like the annotations were getting a little bit small, they would go full screen on the annotation so people could see it, and then they'd come back out. So I could be talking, and I'd be looking to the side here and writing on this, and then I could just look real quickly and still maintain that contact with the students. And I thought this ended up being more effective than some of the earlier ways that we were doing it, so that made a pretty pleasing video type.
And your shirt's right side round.
And the shirt's right side around when you're doing this, that's right. So not using the light board. In this particular case, I was not using the light board on that. So the only time they flip the shirt around is when you're using the light board. So. And I don't know if it was weird or not, but I always wore the same shirt. I have two of those shirts, so I always wore the same shirt when I would make videos. So all the videos have the same shirt. So none of the students said anything about that. I thought maybe they would. Well, whatever. We'll just leave it at that. All right, so what I learned, some good things about it. The students seem to like the videos. And I'll share some of the student comments from the evaluations in a minute here, and some good and some bad ones. I think maybe there's a question of whether they all watched them and how much they watched them and so forth. But they seem to be pretty good. And I was trying to think about why they were effective and see if we could exploit that. And I don't know. And more research maybe would tell this, but I think there's a lot of things that might be going on here. of why they're effective, why there's this interest in flipping classroom. They can watch them when they want, so when they are awake and not at 8 or 9 in the morning when they're not, you know, they'd rather watch them at 1 or 2 in the morning because that's when they're awake. I don't know. So when they're awake, they can do that. They can repeat things. I didn't understand that. You just back it up for 30 seconds and say that again. So I think there's the opportunity to do that. Maybe they just all watch them at the last minute to cram for the exam. I think there was quite a bit of that going on in the class too. So they watch them whenever they need to. Watch them at high speed. So there's some of that going on. I asked them one time, I said, yeah, so what do I sound like the chipmunks?